Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Bite-Sized Performance Psychology. In this video I'm going to go through something that I did with a squad of athletes a couple of years ago, looking at their world-class mindset, and it was in preparation for a World Championships that they were competing in the following year. So it was about 12 months before the competition that we started to engage the athletes with this sort of activity. So prior to this particular activity with the athletes, we'd worked on one before that had come up with some world-class traits, and that was the traits which the athletes were or believed that they needed to demonstrate and were characteristic of them if they were to win a medal at these World Championships. So, I mean, that's always a good practice for any athlete to do, to come up with these list of traits. And you can see the traits which they came up with here. Now, these traits might well differ in between different sports or different types of athletes. So, you wouldn't really take these as a definitive list, but it's what worked for this particular group. So, I would always advise, if you're looking to maintain performance or reach the very high levels of your potential, then certainly start thinking about what are your world-class traits and world-class mindset that will help you achieve. So the philosophy behind this was very much underpinned by kind of the work which British cycling is quite famous for, and they called it their Marginal Gains project. And so they started to look at how they could get those 1% gains in order to give them an advantage over their opponents. The understanding of this was that to go out and find a 10% gain is very, very difficult and probably doesn't exist. So we need to start looking at the smaller micro advantages that we can get. And those micro advantages, those 1%, are all around us. And a lot of these type of traits which the athletes identified fit in well with this philosophy of identifying 1% gains, because it requires focus and concentration and optimism and certainly openness to new ideas. So if we're to try and find these 1% gains, we need to look at how we do things differently. So down here, if we look at the sport which they were competing in, and again this will transfer into any sport. So if we start off and say, well, we enter competition and it's a 50-50 battle. Now, what can we proactively do in order to ensure that we get an extra edge over our competitors? So what can we do in our preparation, within our mindset, that we can be confident that we can outperform our opponents in, and therefore the odds slightly change in our favour, 51% to 49%. And if we complete enough of these 1% gains, then it will move to 52%, 48% in our favour. And then 53%, 47% in our favour. And so eventually we'll end up where the actual contest is now loaded quite significantly in our favour. So we really have to have an open mind about this and to look at where are these 1%. And in reality they're everywhere. And it's you as an athlete within your team or within your squad to start being more insightful and being more aware of where you can make these gains. Due to the logistics of this particular squad that I was working with at this time, one of the gains that we were looking to maximise was in our preparation. And because of the nature of the structure of the sport and the fact that the athletes were geographically dispersed all over the country, they identified that one of their gains would be in their preparation. And they came up with the idea that they needed to engage in every preparation session. So that was training, whether it was technical, tactical, or at the gym, away from the squad to an absolute maximum. And that would be enough, if everyone engaged in that, for them to get a 1% extra gain. So whatever that gain is for you, it undoubtedly will be different to what this squad came up with. But it's important for you to start unearthing these 1% gains. So that's the game that these athletes came up with, and we put a plan in place to help them really focus about how they would increase their productivity in these training sessions. One of the things that I often include in work that I do with athletes is to just take an indicator of their level of commitment to what we've decided to do and their confidence that they can be successful. And if their commitment or their confidence is low, then certainly we need to look at reasons why and how we can increase those two factors. Because we know that if we want a world-class mindset, we have to have high levels of commitment to what we do, and we also have to have high levels of confidence to what we do. And that was kind of why I put this down in this bottom corner, and looking at where world-class actually begins. So it's this side of that red arrow. So unless you have that level of commitment and confidence, it's unlikely that you're going to produce the kind of world-class effort or the world-class mindset that you're after in order to get to the top end of your performance. So what I would suggest is you kind of think about the things that we've spoke about in this and look at how you can translate that and transfer it into your particular sport, whether that's an individual or as a team sport.